All right, hello everybody. My name is David, and I'll talk a little bit about how sending emails is very hard. A little bit of background information. I acquired Hacker News Digest as a side project back in 2016. Hacker News Digest is basically a service where you can subscribe to receive a daily digest of the top 10 stories of Hacker News of the previous day. And if you don't know Hacker News, it's kind of like a Reddit clone that's geared specifically towards developers and entrepreneurs and startup people. When I acquired it in 2016, it was this really small Django application, and it used MailChimp as the mailing list software. I really don't like working with Django, so I rebuilt it from scratch in Ruby on Rails. And as part of that, I also removed MailChimp as the dependency for the software. So I basically built the mailing list software from scratch. Since I did that, I grew the subscribers from about 2,000 to about 5,000, meaning that I sent 5,000 emails a day, and I sent in total on Hacker News Digest about 1.3 million emails. So all of that together gave me a lot of practical experience about how to send a lot of emails and actually reach the inbox of people. Now, I do need to know, I do need to stress that I'm not an expert on this. I'm just going to talk a little bit about my experiences and how I solved the issues that I encountered. So just as a reference, this is what it looks like, the email that you would receive. As you can see, it is an HTML email, although there's a text version available as well. It's a reasonably simple design. You can see the stories there, it's pretty basic. There's many problems with sending emails, but I'm going to focus today on two of them, which are reaching the inbox, or also known as deliverability, and HTML email rendering across multiple email clients. So first of all, deliverability, which means how many of the emails that you send actually reach the inbox of your recipients, as opposed to end up in the spam folder, right? We're all very sensitive to spam, and most email clients nowadays have a spam filter integrated in it. For example, Gmail has a very sensitive spam filter. Now, how the spam filter works is, on the one hand, it checks the content of the email, of course, as we all know, but on the other hand, it also checks the reputation of the IP address of the sender. So if a sender is known to have sent a lot of spam mails in the past, then any future email after that will also get marked as spam automatically. Now, if the reputation gets low enough, right, then it goes straight to spam, or even might disappear altogether. It doesn't even end up in the spam box. Now, how does your reputation get influenced, right? How do you get a bad reputation? One issue would be if you send a lot of email from a new IP address. This happens often with cloud services, right? If you boot up a new server on Google Cloud or on Amazon AWS, it has a new IP address, and that IP address might never have sent any emails before. Now, if you suddenly start sending thousands of emails a day from that IP address, Gmail, for example, would know, okay, I've never seen any emails before, and now suddenly there's thousands of them. This probably is spam, and then it'll be, marked as spam. A second one would be the mark as spam button in the email client. You've all seen it. If you receive an email and there's like a button on it, if it's spam, you can click it, and it disappears, and any future spam also ends up in the spam box. That also would hit the reputation of your IP address. And then lastly, which is actually a little unknown, if you keep sending email to people who have marked you as spam already, then every email that you send after that would put a hit on your reputation. So looking at this, it kind of implies that you can tell when somebody marks you as spam. And indeed you can. There's something called an ISP feedback loop, which lets you get notified every time that somebody marks an email that you sent as spam. And you get the recipient's address, you get exactly which email you sent was marked as spam, you get all of that information. When you get a complaint like that, you basically have to stop sending email to that recipient, or you would get your reputation hit. Now, to get these ESP feedback loops, it's not automatic. You probably never heard of it. You have to register for it at every email client, so at Gmail, at Yahoo, at AOL, you have to separately register for it. You have to fulfill special requirements to be able to get into this feedback loop. And it's basically, a lot of work. Now, luckily, there's email sending services which do all of this for you. You might have noticed that these are out there. Amazon SES, for example, simple email service. And you might have wondered, like, okay, why do these exist? Because sending email is actually really quite easy. If you have a web application, just just from a Linux server, you can really easily send emails. But this is exactly why these services exist, because they have set up these ISP feedback loops. And they have kind of standardized the interface to these complaints. So you would get webhooks every time somebody marks an email from you as spam, and then you can really easily unsubscribe that user from your mailing list. And they have, you can see there a lot of other useful features as well. One of them is the shared IPs. Remember that I said that if a new IP address really sends out a lot of emails, that's bad for your reputation. Well, they have like a list of shared IPs which they use to send all kinds of emails. So if you suddenly start sending 5,000 new emails, they spread it out over those IP addresses that already have a history of sending emails. So you don't have to worry about that anymore. Now, the problem with these services is that they're quite expensive. All right, Amazon SES is about 10 cents for 1,000 emails. And it runs up until even more than $1 per 1,000 emails. Remember that I'm sending 5,000 emails a day, and I'm not making any money from that, so it would be quite expensive for me to use one of these more expensive services. The way I fix that is, luckily, these email sending services all are compatible with SMTP, right? The normal email sending protocol. And they all have a free coda. So I basically have integrated with a few of them and use right up until the free coda for all of them, meaning that I pay really little to send my 5,000 emails a day. So the second problem is HTML email rendering. Basically, if you check out on the internet, okay, what can I use in HTML emails as the HTML tags and what's supported, there's apparently very little support. This is a table from MailChimp, who are really very experts on sending HTML emails. As you can see, you can't use external style sheets. It's almost never supported. You can't use divs for layouting, which is nowadays really normal in web design. You can't use them in HTML emails. You can use embedded CSS, or basically like style tags in the HTML. But it's not supported everywhere. In fact, Gmail only supports it since last year. That's how bad it is. Background images badly supported. Basically, the only safe things are simple inline CSS and table-based layouts. So, just as a summary, you can't use style sheets. You have to use simple CSS. You have to use tables for layouts. You can't use divs. And worst of all, there's no consistent implementation of the HTML spec. So each email client has different ideas about what to render and what not to render, what tags they support and what they don't support. And yeah, a lot of enterprise corporations use really outdated Outlook email clients and whatnot, and it's just a nightmare to support all of them. Basically, it's hacks upon hacks upon hacks if you want to have any sort of consistency. If that sounds familiar, it's because this was what the web was like in 1999. It's really like going back in time when you have to design for HTML email. Now, how I solved this was for the nested table layouting. I found a framework that actually allows you to define the layout in a really sane syntax, and then renders or compiles it down into a workable table layout. Basically, I don't have to think about tables anymore. You can just define it in really sane stuff, and then they will take care of making it work in the majority of the email clients. Now, because the style tag is not well supported, you have to use inline CSS. So basically, you have to put the style attribute inside of every HTML tag. It's really annoying because Gmail has a maximum limit of 102 kilobytes. Now, if your email is longer than 102 kilobytes, Gmail will truncate it and show that little notice at the bottom, message clipped, view entire message. You may have seen it. It really ruins the user experience, and especially for Hacker News Digest, that would be totally worthless. So you definitely need minification of the HTML. So just to give you an example of what the table layout looks like, the selected part In the screenshot is the code. This is the code required to render that. So as you can see, it's quite a lot of code. Those are 11 tables inside of each other. There's about 100 HTML tags, and total is 4 kilobytes. Remember, this is not even with inline CSS. After inlining and minification, well, without indentation or with indentation, this is what it looks like. It's a lot bigger, but just to give you a more zoomed in view, this is the before of one story. As you can see, the table there for one story is really sad. And this is what the CSS inlined and minified. Basically, after inlining the CSS, these 5 stories go from 4 kilobytes to 10 kilobytes. And that's not even with the custom fonts yet. Because, as you can see, I like to use fallbacks and proper CSS font family stuff. But that's 170 characters. Imagine if you have to inline that in each and every HTML tag that contains text. That basically adds 170 characters to every tag. It's just impossible to be below the 102 kilobyte limit then. So what I did for this is I just put it in the style tag, which is badly supported, but at least, you know, the email clients that would support it can use it, and for the email clients that don't support it, well, they use the default font, which is, you know, not that bad. There's also poor responsive design, you know, responsive design in HTML email that's, yeah, a fairy tale almost. Poor support for media queries. It's obviously you can't inline that, so it's all kind of, yeah, poorly supported. Now, after you inline all of that, you need to still minify it. And apparently, after looking a long time, it's really hard to find any library that really does minification in a way that makes sense for HTML emails. There were some special requirements that I had because I had to inline some of the CSS, but not everything, right? Like, for example, the font family needed to be in their own style tag. I had to remove some classes, but again, not all, because media queries requires classes, and you have to minimize the class names that do have to stay there. So small24 becomes mrd.in, which is basically like, right, obfuscated a smaller version of the same class name. But to get all of these features in one library was impossible. So I had to basically build or throw together with some duct tape a hacky pipeline of several different scripts and libraries to get inside the 102 kilobytes just to be able to send this Hacker News Digest. So as a conclusion, if you value your time and sanity, just pay somebody to do the delivery of your emails and stick with text emails, because HTML emails are definitely more work than you'd imagine. And that's it.
Zijn er nog vragen?
Engels of Nederlands?
Hier.
E-mail sending services. Is er een domein geassocieerd met die SES'en? Wordt dat verstuurd bijvoorbeeld vanaf een AWS-domein? Of kunt je zelf uw domein gebruiken?
Je kan zelf je eigen domein gebruiken.
En is het noodzakelijk? Of kun je ook een domein gebruiken van hun?
Ik denk dat het noodzakelijk is.
Ja.
Ja.
Veel van die services, onder andere Amazon SES, geraakt wel gemakkelijk door de spamfilter, maar zeker bij Gmail, waar dat de meeste gebruikers zijn tegenwoordig, komt het dan in een aparte tab, bij notifications of zo. Kent u toevallig services die wel in de inbox geraken, ongeacht prijs?
Nee. Dat is een bekend probleem bij e-mails versturen.
Dat is de hoofdreden dat ik er nog altijd zelf doe eigenlijk.
Het zou kunnen dat er iets bestaat, maar ik ken het niet.
Als je al die verschillende services gebruikt, dan moet je ook al die ISP feedback loop webhooks ook doen. Is dat iets dat je in een gem of zoiets samenstopt, of is dat gewoon allemaal proprietary?
Ik heb daar zelf een gestandaardiseerde interface voor gebouwd, maar dat is niet publiek, denk ik. Het zou kunnen dat ik het publiek gemaakt heb, maar ik weet niet. Ik heb er altijd niet veel werk in gestoken, het is niet zo moeilijk.